Yo, what's up guys? It's Noah here, and in today's video, we're going to be talking through a couple player props I like on Prizepicks for this Week 2 NFL slate on Sunday. For this video, we're going to talk about some plays I like for the full Sunday slate of games, and I got 4 plays that I'm going to give out in this video, guys. So, as always, we're going to talk through all 4 of these plays, and we're going to share why I like them. Before we do get started though, if you guys do enjoy these Prizepicks videos, and if they do help you out, make sure you hit that like button down below. I always appreciate the likes, guys. Hit that subscribe button if you have not yet. And also, if you guys are new to Prizepicks, be sure to check them out, sign up, and use my promo code NOAH. If you do look at the bottom of the screen, when you sign up for Prizepicks with my promo code, you will get your first deposit matched up to $100. They'll basically double whatever you put in as your first deposit up to $100. So if you deposit $50, they'll give you an additional $50 to play with. If you deposit $100, they'll give you an additional $100 to play with. Just make sure that, again, when you sign up, use that code NOAH. Also, I want to shout out Sleeper because we are now partnered up with Sleeper, guys, and Sleeper also has some cool promotions that they run, and they're giving you a $100 match on your first deposit as well when you sign up and use code NOAH. Also, want to say that Sleeper does have another free square available for this Sunday slate of games. So they have Tyreek Hill's receiving yard prop discounted down to 0.5. So you definitely want to be taking that over on Sleeper. Take Tyreek Hill over 0.5 receiving yards, and then you can find any plays you like to pair with that. You can play 2-pick entries on Sleeper, 3-pick, 4-pick, whatever it may be. You can play up to 8-pick entries on Sleeper, and you can win up to 100x your money over there. So if you really like to chase for those high payouts, I definitely recommend giving Sleeper a try. We've been doing really well with our Sleeper plays lately. I do give out a lot of Sleeper plays over on Patreon. Last NFL on Sunday, we took the McCaffrey free square, made, I think it was a 6x payout. We did a 3-pick entry, paid out about 6x. That hit, and then yesterday in MLB, we hit our 2-pick entry as well. We've been doing pretty well with our Sleeper plays over on Patreon. So if you guys want to get some Sleeper plays from me, I do give those out on Patreon. But again, guys, if you're not on Sleeper, use that promo code NOAH, and you will get your first deposit matched up to $100. But yeah, guys, let's go ahead and talk about this Prizepicks slate and what I'm liking for this Week 2 slate. 4 plays, again, that we're going to talk about. Got 2 receiving yard props I like. I got a rush attempt prop that I like, and then a fantasy score prop. So we'll start off in the receiving yards category. And the first guy that I want to talk about is going to be Keenan Allen. So we're going to be looking at Keenan Allen here, 68.5 receiving yards. And I do like the over here for Keenan Allen. So let's talk about kind of why I like that play first, or like this play. So first off, if you take a look at DK Sportsbook right now, they actually have Keenan Allen's receiving yard prop set at 71.5. So Prizepicks, obviously 3 yards, not like a major difference, but it's something. Every yard counts when you're talking about doing player props. You'd be surprised how many times you take a guy over 68.5, or let's say, for example, this line does get bumped up to 71.5. You'd be surprised how many times Keenan Allen would finish with like 69 or 70 yards, and that 3-yard difference actually comes back to kill you. So getting every yard matters. I do expect at some point Prizepicks probably will bump this up to 71.5 and get even with the sports books, but we're getting it at 68.5 right now on Prizepicks. I like the over here quite a bit. I think it's a really good matchup for Keenan Allen going up against the Titans. Last season, the Titans were one of the biggest pass funnels in the league, and I expect that to be the case once again this season. They were very, very stout against the run, but they really struggled against the pass. And if we take a look at the Titans last season in terms of receptions, receiving yards, targets allowed to opposing wide receivers, they gave up the second most targets to opposing wide receivers, the second most receiving yards, the second most receptions, and then the third most receiving yards. So the Titans were a team you could beat through the air. They were very tough on the ground, and the Chargers, they're going to be coming into this game without Austin Eckler, their top running back, who's also a guy they use a lot in the passing game. They target a lot in the passing game. So without Austin Eckler, and it's already a matchup that's going to be tough. It's going to be tough for the Chargers to run the ball. I think this could be a spot where you definitely see Justin Herbert air it out a lot. I mean, I don't even know what Herbert's pass attempts line is for this week, but I would expect it, it's almost close to 40. Vegas is expecting a lot of dropbacks, a lot of pass attempts for Herbert, and when Herbert's throwing the ball, we know where the ball's going to. It's going to Keenan Allen, it's going to Mike Williams. Normally, it would be going to Austin Eckler as well, but Eckler won't be playing this week. So without Austin Eckler, in a really good matchup, and a matchup that I think sets up very well for Keenan Allen, I like over 68.5 receiving yards here. I mean, if we look at what Keenan Allen did in Week 1, I think he had just over 70 receiving yards, got good volume like he always does. He's always been a target monster all throughout his career. Got 9 targets last week, six catches for 76 yards. And if we take a look at his game log in the games he's played without Austin Eckler, last 6 games without Austin Eckler, he's had at least 11 targets in 4 out of those 6 games. And over that 6-game stretch, he's had over 100 receiving yards in 3 out of those 6 games. Now, there have been some games where Keenan Allen has disappointed. Like his last game he played without Eckler was against Houston. He only had 4 catches for 35 yards. Against Miami, he only had 3 catches for 39 yards. But against the Jets, he had 16 catches for 145 yards. Against the Raiders, he had 9 catches for 103 yards. Against Jacksonville, he had 10 catches for 125 yards. So he's had some big games in the past without Eckler. I think this could be another big game here for Keenan Allen. So this is the first play I like. Is going to be Keenan Allen more than 68.5 receiving yards. And then the next prop that I like is going to be another receiving yard prop. And we're going to look at Mark Andrews' 43.5 receiving yards. Now, I was debating between receiving yards and fantasy score. I like both these quite a bit. I think with Andrews, with how much Lamar Jackson likes to target Andrews in the red zone, Andrews' touchdown ability, I think fantasy score is pretty strong. But I was looking at last season and looking at Andrews' game log. There were 2 games last season where Andrews got 44 receiving yards but did not get 10 fantasy points. And every game last season where he got at least 10 fantasy points, he had 44 receiving yards in all those games. So that's kind of why I'm siding with receiving yards here. But again, I like both these plays for Andrews over receiving yards and over fantasy score. Maybe if one of these lines gets bumped, you could just take the other. But we're going to talk about receiving yards here, 43.5. So first off, if we take a look at DK Sportsbook right now, they do have this line set at 44.5, and it's juiced minus 125, favoring the over. So we're getting a nice little discount here on Prizepicks with the line at 43.5. Again, I wouldn't be surprised if this line also maybe gets bumped a little, and by some chance, if it does, again, you could pivot to the over 10 fantasy score. But I like Andrews, to have at least 44 receiving yards here. I mean, if we look at last season, Mark Andrews in the games he played, he was able to get 44 receiving yards in a large majority of those games. I think I want to say like 13 out of the 18 or 13 out of the 17 games he played last season, he had at least 44 receiving yards. In some of these games, like there was that one game against Cleveland where he only got 2 targets. He had 0 catches for 0 yards. That's obviously a huge outlier. For a guy like Mark Andrews, that almost never happens. Andrews has always been a target monster in this Ravens offense. Now, his competition for targets this season is a little bit, he has more competition for targets, I should say. They do have Zay Flowers now, who's emerging. They have Odell Beckham as well. But I still think Andrews is going to be a guy that consistently projects for 7 to 8 targets on a weekly basis here. And 44 receiving yards is not hard for Mark Andrews, who's going to be an every down tight end. He's going to be out there running routes. I know this Ravens team is not the most pass-heavy offense, but that could change this week. They're going to be without J.K. Dobbins this week. Obviously, last week against Houston, they were able to beat Houston pretty easily. They didn't really have to air it out a ton. This could definitely be a spot against a really good Bengals team. I know the Bengals were bad in week 1, but against a Bengals team that has a very good track record of being good, this could definitely be a spot where we could see the Bengals get with the lead, play with the lead. And if that's the case, maybe the Ravens are forced to air it out a little bit more this week than they normally would. So with Andrews' ability to just get open, with his ability to demand targets in this offense, I know his competition for targets is a little bit higher this season, but I still think 44 receiving yards is pretty easy for a guy that's typically had a track record of being a top tight end in the NFL. He was out last week. He's listed as questionable this week, but all reports are saying that Andrews is 100% good to go. There should be no limitations for him. And again, this is a play I like quite a bit. There's 2 plays you could take here: receiving yards or fantasy score, but I prefer receiving yards. So that's our next play that I'm going to be taking. And then another play I like, we're going to be looking at a rush attempts prop. And I want to talk about David Montgomery set at 13.5 rush attempts. And I also like the over here. So if we take a look at DK Sportsbook right now, we look at David Montgomery rush attempts. The line is set at 13.5, but it is juiced to minus 145, favoring the over. So DraftKings has this as a fairly high chance of hitting, given that it has minus 145 favoring the over. And if we look at last week, against the Chiefs, David Montgomery got 20 plus carries. He got 21 carries last week against Kansas City. He was used as kind of their clear RB1. Now they do still have Jahmyr Gibbs, and I think they will involve Jahmyr Gibbs more and more every week. They even said last week after the game that they expect to involve Jahmyr Gibbs more each week as the season progresses. They wanted to kind of take it easy on him in his first NFL game. But if we look at snap counts last week for the Lions, and if we look at how much David Montgomery played, he was on the field a decent amount. He did play 79% of the snaps last week, 55 of the 70 snaps for the Lions, he was on the field and he got 21 carries. Now, this matchup against Seattle, this is a game that I think can be relatively high scoring. Like, I think this game does have a pretty high total. It's like in the mid to high 50 or the mid to high 40s, excuse me. And I'm pretty sure last season when these teams played, obviously Montgomery wasn't on the team then, but last season when these teams played, it was a really high scoring game. Detroit, when their games at home have been high scoring as of late. The games, in a dome, so you're not gonna have to worry about any weather conditions here. I mean, if they're going to play Montgomery 70+% of the snaps on a weekly basis, now I do expect, again, more involvement from Jahmyr Gibbs this week, but I think there were even some plays where they had Gibbs and Montgomery on the field together. Like, they can do that. Gibbs can play as like a receiver. He's a very good pass catcher, so we know Montgomery's going to be on the field for a good majority of the snaps. He got 21 carries last week. I wouldn't expect 21 carries again, but by some chance, if the Lions get a lead, I think that's great for Dave Montgomery. Even in a scenario where the Lions are maybe trailing in this game, like, I don't think that's terrible. Like, I think Montgomery's still going to be on the field. Like, I don't think he's going to just get game scripted out. But obviously, we want them to be playing with the lead because they're a lot more likely to be running the ball if they're playing with the lead. But either way, I think 14 carries here for Dave Montgomery is definitely in his range of outcomes. Given he got 21 carries last week, given he played almost 80% of the snaps, that's a recipe for success, I would say. And DraftKings has this juiced -145 favoring the over. You don't really find -145 props too often on Prizepicks. So when you do find them, you have to take advantage. So this is the next play I like. Dave Montgomery, more than 13.5 rush attempts. And then the final play that I like is going to be a fantasy score prop. We're going to be looking at Rachaad White, 12.5 fantasy score. This is another over that I like. So if we take a look at Rachaad White last week, it was not great. You look at his fantasy score. He only put up 7 fantasy points last week. But you have to look more into it. You have to look at the usage. You have to look at the volume. And if you take a look at Rachaad White, just in terms of usage, volume last week, snaps played, he got a workhorse role. I mean, if you look at how many carries he got 17 carries. He was super inefficient on the ground. He only had 39 yards. He averaged just over 2 yards per carry. But he got 17 carries. He also got 2 targets. He had 2 receptions. And if we take a look at his snaps played last week, he was on the field for almost 80% of the snaps. Last week, Rachaad White played 79% of the snaps. 54 of their 68 offensive snaps, Rachaad White was on the field for. And the only other running backs that even played were Sean Tucker and Chase Edmonds. Sean Tucker played 15% of the snaps. Chase Edmonds played 12% of the snaps. Clearly, Rachaad White, just based off week 1 usage, clearly Rachaad White is the number 1 running back for the Bucs. He's going to be a workhorse type back. And we've seen Rachaad White be efficient and be effective when given opportunity. I mean, last season, especially towards the end of the season, when he was getting kind of a workhorse type role, he was very good in those situations. He was efficient on the ground. He's been a really good pass catcher since coming into the league. Now, I think last season when he was playing with Tom Brady, things were a lot different. Obviously, Brady loves to target his running backs. Baker Mayfield probably won't target the running backs nearly as much as Brady would. But Rachaad White has shown the ability to be a really good pass-catching running back. And if we project him for, let's say, his rushing yard prop set at 54.5. So let's say we project him for about 50 rushing yards. His receiving yards prop set at 18.5. So let's say we project him for about 15 to 20 receiving yards. Well, that's 7 points right there just from yardage alone. And then you got to think about receptions on Prizepicks. It is full PPR scoring, so you do get a point per reception. I would say White probably projects for at least 2 to 3 receptions. And then you got to think about touchdown potential. He's going to get all the goal line work. So anytime the Buccaneers get near the goal line, Rachaad White, you expect to be out there, on the field punching it in for a touchdown. Obviously, touchdown potential is tough to predict. It's hard to predict when a guy's going to score a touchdown, but I think because of Rachaad White's just volume and usage with how much he's going to be on the field, there's going to be plenty of touchdown chances for him. And I could see him going over this line without scoring a touchdown. He could just rack up a lot of catches. He could be way more efficient on the ground than he was last week. I think this is a matchup where we should expect White to be way more efficient because if we look last season, the Bears were a pretty bad defense against the run. Last season, the Bears did allow the second most fantasy points to opposing running backs. They gave up the third most rushing yards per game. They gave up the second most rushing touchdowns per game. In terms of receptions and receiving yards, they weren't as bad in those categories. But overall, in terms of fantasy points, they did allow the second most fantasy points to running backs. So this is a much better matchup for Rachaad White. Expect him to be a lot more efficient in this matchup. And the volume's going to be great. The snaps are going to be great. I know it was Thursday night. Alexander Madison, he played 90% of the snaps, and he scored 6 fantasy points. That's always possible. Like, there's always a chance that a running back could be out there a ton and just not really do anything. But when you're talking about running backs and we're talking about fantasy football, you only get fantasy points when you're on the field. You can't get fantasy points sitting on the bench. And we know that Rachaad White's going to be on the field for a large majority of the snaps. So 12.5 fantasy score. I do like the over here as our fourth and final play for this video. So this is what I'm liking, guys. Did they just take out Mark Andrews? Why did that go away? Okay, so Mark Andrews receiving yards. I don't know why it just got pulled off the board. So I guess we'll take fantasy score then. I did not even see like usually they put like a little thing down there to show that it got taken off. I didn't even see that. So now that that's off the board, I'm guessing they're going to bump that receiving yard line. If it comes back at 43.5 still, you could take that. If it gets bumped to like 45 or 46, you could pivot to fantasy score. Either way, I like both plays, receiving yards or fantasy score for Mark Andrews, but that's kind of annoying. Prizepicks just removed that prop as I'm making this video. But these are our 4 plays. I guess these will be our 4 official plays for this week. Keenan Allen, more than 68.5 receiving yards. Dave Montgomery, more than 13.5 rush attempts. Rachaad White, more than 12.5 fantasy score. And Mark Andrews, more than 10 fantasy score or more than 43.5 receiving yards if that receiving yards prop comes back. We'll have to see. But again, guys, this is what I'm liking for this Week 2 Sunday slate. Excited for this Sunday. Excited to be sweating out some NFL again. I know last Sunday was not great for us. We missed all 4 of our plays last Sunday. We're going to bounce back this week. Got a good feeling about these 4 plays. So, yeah, guys, hope you enjoyed the video. Appreciate you watching as always. Hit that like button if you guys enjoyed. Hit that subscribe button if you have not yet. And again, guys, if you're not on Prizepicks, go check them out. Sign up. Use promo code NOAH. When you sign up for Prizepicks, you will get your first deposit matched up to $100. And also, if you guys are not on Sleeper, we are now partnered up with Sleeper now. You guys can sign up for Sleeper. Use promo code NOAH over there as well and get your first deposit matched up to $100. Be sure to take advantage of that Sleeper free square. Sleeper has Tyreek Hill's receiving yards set at 0.5. That is available all the way up until Sunday night because the Dolphins play on Sunday Night Football. So use that prop, that free square. Find some plays you like on Sleeper. And if you guys want my Sleeper entries when I'm playing on Sleeper with the free square, I share those on Patreon. You guys can check out the Patreon link down below in the description. Not only will you get Sleeper entries from me, but you'll also get Prizepicks entries from me as well. And if you play DFS, if you play DraftKings, if you play Yahoo DFS, I give out core plays. I make player pools for DFS as well. That's provided in the Patreon package too. So again, check that out, guys. Link down below in the description if you are interested. But that's all that I got for this slate. Appreciate you guys watching the video as always. Hope you enjoyed. Let's win some money this week. We'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.